Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today we've got another video in our Start Collecting series. This series is all about looking at the various different Start Collecting boxes for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and talking about how we can use them to start an army of the force they're supposed to be for. We'll also look at how we can expand upon this by adding other units, terrain pieces, endless spells, and the like. And today we're looking at the Demons of the Blood God Khorne, the Daemons of Khorne Start Collecting box for the army Blades of Khorne. So let's get looking into what the units are inside this box first, and we'll have a brief talk about them. And the first kit that we get inside this box is quite an interesting one because it has a couple of different builds, and I think both are like viable options to be built from this box to start an army up. So I'm of course talking about the Bloodthirster of Khorne Skull Cannon of Khorne kit that you get inside this box. It's a really interesting kit. You can see here in the picture I've got here, it is built as a Blood Throne of Khorne. So what this is sort of like a chariot that's pulled around, and it's got a Herald of Khorne on top of it. Now you could choose instead to build this kit up as the Skull Cannon of Khorne, which is an artillery piece for Khorne, which is a really cool, fun piece to add because Khorne doesn't get a lot of shooting, so having that is like an interesting sort of piece. But you'd also be able to build the Herald of Khorne on foot if that was the case. I think both variations of this are worth looking into, and really it comes down to preference. If you want a little bit of shooting and a cannon in your army, then definitely build the Skull Cannon of Khorne and put your Herald on foot. If not, and you want a little bit more survival with Herald and have him sort of a bit more bespoke and looking like he's the big boss leader, then definitely put him on the Bloodthirster of Khorne. It is worth noting though, if you build the the Bloodthirster of Khorne, you do not get anything that you can do with the Skull Cannon bits. There's not enough parts in the kit to do anything with them. But enough about him. We'll start looking at the Bloodletters. Who are your 10 sort of foot troops you can see here? These are the most generic demons for the Blood God Khorne. They're pretty decent. They're fighty. They do some mortal wounds here and there with their decapitating blow abilities, and they can get decently fighty in combat when they get in larger numbers. Definitely, I'd be looking to expand upon this unit, maybe even get more units of Bloodletters in the army, but definitely have them larger than 10 and some nice big blobs of these dudes. You probably don't want to go too big though. They do only have 1-inch reach weapons, so that becomes a hindrance at certain points, and because they are on larger base sizes on 32s, they can't actually strike over each other, so you probably don't want to go more than 20 in a unit. The last unit inside this box is the Blood Crushers of Khorne. So Blood Crushers are effectively just Bloodletters of Khorne mounted atop the mighty beasts here that you see. The Juggernauts of Khorne are the beasts they're mounted on, and they're just horrendous in combat. They're so fighty. These dudes will just trample across the battlefield and smash most things out of the way. They once again do some mortal wounds with their Hellblades from the riders on top, but the Murderous Charge is where it really comes into cool, and they do some mortal wounds as they sort of just crush into the enemies and smash them into a bloody pulp. All in all though, I think this is a really great Start Collecting box. It gives you some cool options to start with, and you've got like a decent choice to make that I don't think you can really go wrong on how you pick your choice with that, with the Blood Throne Skull Cannon kit. Definitely the first things you want to start looking at to potentially add to this army, as I've stated, is already probably more Bloodletters, bulking up those troops for your army, and also remembering that you can generate some summoning points, so it's worth having those around the place as well. The other thing to mention is you can probably upgrade your Blood Crushers, add another 3 Blood Crushers in, or even if you've got Skull Cannons, there's some cool things you can do out there with Skull Cannons and potentially take them in multiples in an army, which would be quite cool to have this artillery line of shooting Skull Cannons. Would just be cool looking. The first thing though I want to talk about, like to where to go next outside of stuff in this box, is the terrain piece. So I don't really think you need to buy the terrain piece for this army. You probably can buy it later down the line, but it's not really a necessity, especially if we're focusing on the demon half of this army. So if we're going to build a demon half, we don't actually have any priests, so one of the main benefits of the terrain piece is allowing you to reroll prayers while you're near it, so we don't actually get any benefits from it. However, putting it on the table, it does give a -1 to cast for wizards on the table, so you can use that to sort of disrupt your opponent's plans. But is it really that big a deal to consider making it one of your first purchases? Probably not. and I'd probably avoid it as a first purchase and go look at something else. The first dude that I want to have a look at though, outside of this stuff, is of course the most Warhammer of all Warhammer models, because Warhammer models are measured on the amount of skulls they have on the model, and Skulltaker has an entire cloak of skulls. He's a special named character and is sort of like the chosen champion of Khorne. He goes around the realms taking the skulls of people who his god want him to. He's got some pretty decent stats. I mean, he's got a 4-up save and he can reroll save rolls for attacks that target him, which is really cool. He's got his own sort of special mortal wound thing, however his does 3, so he's pretty fighty. He's only a 5 wound character, but he does get some benefits when fighting other characters. He'll go around murdering other characters of similar or slightly better stature than himself. He's just a really cool piece to have for the army for me. Like, if you're going to have Khorne Daemons, like Skulltaker is just such an auto-include model for me. He embodies everything that Khorne is trying to do. He wants to get up close and fight you and take skulls for the Skull Throne. The next unit I want to talk about is the Fleshhounds. So these are the demon dogs of the Blood God Khorne. They're pretty fast at 8 inch, nothing over the top, but there's some decent movement there. And they've also got, a shooting attack that pretty much does nothing, so it's not really worth mentioning too much about. However, they've got some different sort of aspects to them that make them really great. So first of all, they can reroll charge rolls for this unit, so it actually makes picking these up really good for summoning later, because you can summon them up 9 inch away and actually reroll those charges, so it gives you a little bit better chancing of landing them. Also, every unit of Fleshhounds can unbind as if it were a wizard, which is really cool. It can help with some of that anti-magic, because Khorne is all about not using magic, so it helps the army sort of push that lever up a little bit more, having them on the battlefield. The next unit I want to talk about though, after the Fleshhounds, is of course sort of their, de facto leader model, and that is Karaneck. Karaneck, once again, is another named character. I know I've got a few named characters in this, but the Khorne ones just are so Khornate and they fit the aesthetic so well. I can't imagine having a Khorne army without them. Karaneck is effectively sort of a play on Cerberus, a 3-headed Fleshhound. He's got some pretty decent offensive stats and abilities, really allowing him to sort of go out there and hunt down foes. He's also got abilities where he could choose a particular foe at the start of the battle and go hunt them and get some benefits against them. It's really cool. Once again, it's just such a Khornate model that I really enjoy using it on the table to make my army just fit the aesthetic really well. The last model, of course, and it's the same with all these armies that are Chaos God based, is of course you've got to have the Greater Daemon in there. And that for Khorne is a Bloodthirster. Bloodthirsters are just such awesome looking models. They've got these giant wings with these massive axes, flails and hammers. And there's also a named character variation and a Scarbrand. He's sort of flightless because he thought he was good enough to attack his god one day, and well, that did not work out well for him. But he is super, super killy. All of these fight like bricks. They're not necessarily the toughest Greater Daemons in the world. They do go down relatively easy if you use them incorrectly or put them into, really unstoppable odds, but they will put out a lot of damage. They actually also work really well in groups, so potentially getting a few Bloodthirsters together can make some really devastating combos within your force. However, that's all I want to talk about the Start Collecting Daemons of Khorne today. It's a really interesting Start Collecting box, and one of those ones that I think actually has rebuy value in the original Start Collecting box, because obviously you can make that hero into the Skull Cannons. Like, you could buy this 2, 3, even 4 times, and you're probably still getting your money's worth out of the box. I mean, you could take 3 Skull Cannons, a Herald from that, and you'd have 2 units of 6 of your Blood Crushers and 40 Bloodletters to play around with. You'd have a decent army from just 4 Start Collecting boxes. And that gives you enough just to add in these characters that I've mentioned here and some Fleshhounds for summoning and magical defense, that you've really got a great force at a probably quite cheap in comparison price. But let me know what you think about Khorne. Don't forget to leave some comments down below on what you think and any more questions you have about Khorne at all. especially this Start Collecting box in particular. Also, in the description, there'll be a link to our channel's Discord server. You can join in the chat there. I'm in there most of the time at the moment, unfortunately off work due to all the stuff happenings around the world, but even when things return to normal, I'll still try and be in there as much as possible to chat to folks. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, it's amazing. Thank you for everyone who's supporting the channel so far. You guys are amazing. But lastly, stay safe everyone, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. I'll see you all again real soon.